Welcome to a new edition of the Neon Jazz interview series with jazz bass clarinetist Jason Stein. He talked about his latest 2018 CD, Jason Stein's Locksmith, Isidor, after Caroline. He was born in New York and went to the University of Michigan in Ann Arbor. He then moved to Chicago in 2005 and has since been on the road quite a bit. He's performed throughout the U.S. and Europe as both the bandleader and sideman and has amassed a discography of over 40-plus albums. He's an interesting cat with great revelations, so please get to know him and dig this interview, my friends.
So, Jason, thank you for taking a minute out for Neon Jazz, man. I appreciate it.
Absolutely, my pleasure.
Talk to me about your latest 2018 album, Locksmith. Talk to me a little bit about the artistic forces that went into this release.
Artistic forces. Well, you know, for me, I mean, in general, with playing, with making records and composing music, I just play music that sounds good to me, and that is the music that I'm interested in. I don't really tend to think that much about stuff from a conceptual standpoint. I am constantly listening to music, constantly learning, and then when I write and when I play, it's just kind of there. It's just like almost like an unconscious sum of what it is that I've been giving attention to. I sort of ascribe to, I remember seeing an interview with Stein where he was in, I think it was in Sweden, and the interviewer was asking him to describe his music, what he thinks about his music, and Stein said, you know, I leave it to other people to describe my music. I just play what is in my imagination. And I really identify with that.
Right on. So it's safe to say that when each successive release is, you're going off of what just feels right. There's no agenda specifically. It's more of just exploring that creative flow that you have.
Yeah, I would say so.
So, are you from Chicago?
No, I'm originally from New York.
Okay, cool.
I lived in Manhattan until I was 6, and then the suburbs.
What was your childhood like to not only get involved with, you know, music, but more specifically jazz? What were you listening to? What was your family life like?
My family life was, my parents got divorced when I was really young, so I kind of had my life during the week at my mom's house and then on the weekend at my dad's house. I experienced a lot of music from my dad. My dad he wasn't a musician, but he was really a huge music enthusiast. Like, I think my earliest musical memories are being in the car with my dad. He would listen to music like the Kinks, Billy Joel, and he would like really tap out drum rhythms on the steering wheel and sing along, and it was like just the experience of really high enthusiasm with music really left a mark on me. My mom's father, my grandpa, was a professional trumpet player. He was like a swing band band leader and lead trumpet player in Ohio. And I wasn't around when he was working. He did that like more in his 20s. But for my whole life, he played a lot of piano, and he was super enthusiastic about music. And so when I started getting into music, he became a big part of that as well.
So why the clarinet?
Well, I started playing clarinet pretty late compared to most people. I learned how to play music on guitar when I was a kid, and I really enjoyed it, and I learned a lot, but I was never super serious. I was more interested in writing and philosophy, actually. When I first went to college, that's what I thought I wanted to do. And then I picked up the bass clarinet as really just as an experiment. I was playing guitar in some jazz bands, and I thought it would be fun to just mess around with an instrument that used my breath. And I rented a bass clarinet and fell in love with it almost immediately. And it felt very smooth and fluid. The guitar, I never thought that I could be a really great guitar player. It never felt natural, and I knew that there was an aspect of playing an instrument and improvising where it should just feel natural, like talking. And immediately with the bass clarinet, it just kind of felt that way, and I was really inspired to learn everything I possibly could on it. I wound up starting to use the bass clarinet on gigs literally within 1 week of when I started playing it.
So early on in your life, what jazz albums were you listening to that really made an impression on you?
When I was in high school, I heard from somebody that a guitar player that I thought was really great, another high school kid, that he was really into this guy named John Coltrane. And so I was like, I'm gonna check out the John Coltrane record. So I went to Barnes & Noble and just randomly chose a Coltrane record that happened to be, it was called like the Major Works of John Coltrane. It was a double CD, like very late, with a large ensemble playing like Kuku, Semana, and Om. very avant-garde, and I got super deep into that record. For whatever reason, it was music that I easily could have listened to and thought, this is insane. I have no idea what this is. But for whatever reason, I listened to it, and it really resonated with me. And that was really the first example of a jazz record that I liked. And then I just sort of gravitated through John Coltrane's discography, kind of from and more towards earlier records. Blue Train was a record that when I was young I listened to a ton. Giant Steps, and then I got really into Miles Davis records sort of through John Coltrane, kind of Blue, and then on from there.
So talk to me a little bit about what happened prior to you coming to Chicago in '05 and really getting into that scene. What, any school, any major experiences on the stage that were precursors to you coming to Chicago?
Yeah, I went to music school in Ann Arbor at the University of Michigan, and I was there for 3 years. And while I was there, I came into Chicago a lot. It's about a 4.5 hour drive. And one of my really close friends from high school and really middle school is a piano player in town named Paul Gilloret. And I would come into town to play with Paul. And sort of through him, I met a lot of people that are playing in town, to the point where when I graduated in 2004, I had made a lot of friends and had a lot of musical associates here. And so I was already playing a lot. So it just made sense to move here.
So you're in Chicago. We talk about hubs and areas that have a pulse and have a scene. And, I've actually been fortunate to be up in Chicago the last couple of summers. And it's just, to me, it has that New York feel to it. And it seems like it has a very swinging jazz scene. Are you happy with what you're doing in Chicago and how you fit in that music scene?
Yeah, I am. I think it's really great. There's a ton of places to play. A lot of musicians, especially these days, there's a lot of younger musicians that are playing, which is really nice. It feels healthy, a balance of older musicians that have been around for a long time and younger musicians that are getting into stuff. Stylistically, there are a whole bunch of different things going on. There's the really vibrant, more straight ahead jazz scene, playing tunes, playing material that's more coming out of like modern straight ahead jazz music, and all through the spectrum of styles to extremely abstract sound art kind of music. And there's venues that can support all different sorts of improvisation, which is really great. And then I tour quite a bit, and so I wind up being able to have a good balance between playing in town and then playing out of town as well.
So for all of the elders that you've played with, the veterans in jazz, what have they taught you that you in turn have taught younger players that play with you?
On the one hand, when I first moved to town, I had a chance to tour with some older musicians, and so I saw just what it takes to either book a tour or be for a tour. A level of professionalism with things like being on time, traveling, and having to deal with the challenges of going to different cities every day, dealing with trains being late or flights being canceled or this or that, and just kind of troubleshooting things.
What have you learned from the veterans and the elders in jazz that you in turn have taught younger players that you played with?
A few things. So one thing that I think I've learned from older players is just the importance of getting out of town to play. I've noticed that with a lot of younger players, it can feel like the whole world is just about Chicago. Where am I playing in town? What's going on in town? And to me, although it's super important to me being in Chicago and playing here, I think that it's worth having a focus on touring and playing out of town and seeing Chicago as part of a larger world. That was something that I really got from touring, especially when I first moved here. I was lucky enough to do some playing out of town, and it just made the whole world felt smaller, and Chicago was just one part of this larger picture. I think that's important. Another thing, a piece of advice that I remember getting when I was pretty young that I still think about is the idea of no matter what's going on, no matter what the music is like, music can be very intense, a lot happening, but it's our job to remain very relaxed, both physically and mentally, to work from a place of being very relaxed, even when there's a lot of activity going on. That was a really helpful piece of advice that I got from Fred Anderson that I think about, and I've mentioned to younger musicians as well.
So let's say you have a dream tonight and you run into yourself 20 years younger. What advice are you going to give him?
I would sort of give myself that advice, to just stay relaxed regardless of what's going on. This is a tricky undertaking. Playing music and improvising, it's something that I put a lot of time in, and that I feel very dedicated to and very serious about, and sometimes things are great and sometimes things are difficult. And I think it's really important to stay relaxed and understand that things are constantly changing, and to just kind of move with that and not fight stuff. Yeah, I guess that's what stands out to me. And write more, I think. I think it would be cool. I have always practiced a lot, and I've always been really interested and preoccupied with developing my voice and developing my sense of vocabulary and what I can get into playing. I do wish that I had more of a regular routine of writing on a regular basis. I think I'd slap myself on the hand and tell myself to do that.
So one of the best ways that we learn, not only as people that admire music, but as musicians, is to see live jazz. So what live jazz early on, more particularly in your life, did you see that left a really big impression on you?
I saw Joe Henderson play at the Blue Note when I was about 16, and that was really amazing. That left a huge impression on me. Hearing saxophone in a room, just hearing how he could fill up a room, even though Joe notoriously had a somewhat of a smaller, softer, more gentle sound live. It's still the efficiency of his sound and hearing what he could do in the room was really amazing. I saw Lisa Mengelberg and Milford Graves play a duo set at Tonic when I was probably about 20 or so, and that left a huge impression. To my ears, it wasn't working for a while, what they were playing. It wasn't interacting in a way that to me, it was not working. And it seemed like they were aware of that too. And they both continued to do what they were doing. It seemed to me that they didn't try and adapt what they were doing to one another. They just kind of stuck with what they were doing. And the music had this way of naturally adjusting itself and adjusting the way it sounded in the room and what made sense. And then it felt like suddenly things were clicking and it was really working. I have no idea if I heard it again if it would sound the same way to me, but at the time that seemed extremely interesting and important.
My next question is this. I'm going to up the ante a little bit and say there's a jazz DeLorean in front of your house and you can go wherever you want in the history of jazz. Are you going to go see Coltrane or who are you going to see?
Oh, man. I mean, I think John Coltrane is the most important musician to me. But honestly, I think I would see Lester Young, like play as a trio or as a quartet in a small bar somewhere. I think of anybody whose sound I would want to hear in a room and who I would want to see live. I think of that also as like the relationship between recording and live music. Who's someone that is really important to me, but whose recorded sound is probably the least indicative of what they actually sounded like in a room. And I would go with Lester Young.
So on the heels of that, tell me, why do you love jazz?
I love improvising. That's something that is just a natural fit for me. I love being able to work on something and develop different capabilities and different things that I hear in my imagination, and then to use them in a minute-to-minute live way, and the experience of fluidity and taking in a lot of information in real time and then doing things without information. I love all of that. I love the feeling of swinging in its many different incarnations, even in music that doesn't have any explicit meter. To me, there's still a feeling of a swinging and grooving that can be twisted and turned and made into all different kinds of things. That's really compelling to me.
So this is my final question to you, and it's this. everyone has an interpretation, perception, version of who they think you are, your family, your friends, your fans, and you're the one that's living your life. Tell me, who do you think you are?
My whole world is taken up by being a musician and an improviser and being a husband and a father. And those two things flow in and out of one another in many different ways. But really, more than anything, I mean, I would say that I'm an improviser in both music and in life. That I just do my best to understand what's going on, to make the best decisions, and to not be stuck in just one idea of what it is that I do or that I don't do, or what's important to me or what's not important to me. And I let myself change as time goes on and flow with what I think is important and necessary.
Very cool. I think that's a great way to wrap everything up. Hey, man, thank you for taking some time out to open up about your life and music. Thank you for the music. I appreciate it, man.
Absolutely, Joe. Yeah, thanks for the questions.
Thanks for listening and tuning in to yet another Neon Jazz interview, where we give you a bit of insight into the finest players in Chicago, Kansas City, and spots all over the world, giving fans all that jazz. And thanks to Jason for his time, his music, and his stories. If you want to hear more interviews, go to Famous Interviews with Joe Domino on the iTunes Store. Visit neonjazz at youtube.com, and for everything Neon Jazz, all the time, go to the neonjazz.blogspot.com. Until next time, enjoy the jazz, my friends.
Neon Jazz.